Hello, everyone. Welcome to a reading of Lilith's Cave, a book exploration. This is some Jewish folklore. It has been sporadic, it has been pop up. I'm in the middle of relocating myself and others, so please bear with me. Yeah, and on to the intro.
Welcome to Jevim's research channel. Be advised that this channel is not for anyone under the age of 18. Also, the research and discoveries of this channel should not ever reflect the personal opinion or views of Jevim or her team unless publicly stated. Please understand that the opinions of the audience is also not a reflection of what or how Jevim feels. Let's bring a curious mind and open heart to these spaces for educational purposes only.
Okay, everybody, how are you doing? Sorry, this is last minute pop up. Story time, Jewish folklore. And I might have to add some mysticism, even though there's no signs. It's been pretty dumbed down from what I can tell. Extremely dumbed down from what I can tell. But however, it is a place where men are allowed to do magic, and women, if they do so, they are witches. Yes, I said that right. Okay, so you can find this book, those of us that are just first joining, on archive.org, Internet Archives, what you call it, under Lilith's Cave. And Howard Schwartz actually did not, he accumulated folklore and translated it. That's what he did. Now, I do believe we stopped at mocking devils. And if we did so, I'll have to borrow it. It's because it's several pages long. Some of these stories are really short. Some of them are a few pages or more long. So we're waiting on to borrow. Sorry, I cannot financially support at this time. All right, let's blow it up. Look at the artwork there. Isn't that cute? Candy. I have been dissecting this book you speak of. Definitely dissecting this book. I am well protected. I'm well protected. I wear the blood of the mother. I come from my mother, who comes from her mother, and a long line of healing mothers. I am protected by my lineage and my ancestry. I am protected by knowing exactly who I am. I do not need the word of a man or another written word by any other human. The book is written by a man, by men, by people, not God. These are not the direct words from God. These words that you're hearing, Candy, are from drug induced trips of the prophets that seen visions. How do you think they see visions? Why do you think that they seen visions? I got to get into it, y'all, because you wanted to distract class. I appreciate the advice though. They were able to get visions because they took plant substances that enabled them. They took God's just one good head trip, y'all. If you go and watch Danny Jones's latest interview with Kitchens, he's going to show you where John Hopkins was doing research on just that. Where's God? Let's take a plant and see. Exactly. Yep. Yep. So here we are. We're going to get into, mocking devils. I may butcher words. Let me see how many pages. Oh, let's see. Devil's Wedding. I don't think I went into these. The hair and the milk. No. Nope. I believe this is where we're going to start. Yep. Poor little goat hog tied, the little scapegoat. Y'all don't realize the devil's just the scapegoat of the Old Testament. Hello, Nasaya. Good to see you. Hello. We're digging deep, y'all. They want us fighting against each other, fighting over whose God is the best. It's yours. No, it's mine. My God's the best. No, mine. No, mine. No, mine. No, mine. No, mine. Y'all see how silly? Do you see how silly? Good to see you, Nasaya. Yep. They want you to think that it is, yeah, they totally want you to think that it's over religion, but it's actually over ownership and property of the feminine. Okay, mocking devils. The journey from the far in the Moldovan town of Milalini to the town of Banila was fraught with danger, as was the return trip. Any merchant not safely in by nightfall had to face several unpleasant areas populated by spirits, demons, ghosts, imps, and devils who would suddenly appear in strange forms. Now, one night, the merchant Yehoshua set out in his old wagon from Melalini. The wagon was heavily laden with flour, grapes, watermelon, and wine. All around the darkness was heavy, but the road before him was straight. Here and there he came across wagoners on their way back from the fair. Sorry. The stillness of the night was broken at times by the barking of dogs. He passed village after village, each time picking up the calls of the cemetery watchman saying, "Who goes there?" He arrived unharmed around noon the following day in the city of Banila, where he delivered his goods, selling them to the grocers there. He spent several hours unloading and taking new orders, and before he could turn around, the day was over. He left the town at nightfall, determined to return home to Melanini well before the Sabbath. The merchant steered the wagon down the road, lost in thought. Suddenly he awoke from his daydreams. The horses were agitated and stood up on their hind legs, neighing and snorting as if there were wolves around. He was very afraid, for he did not doubt the instincts of the horses. So he took a torch from the ring beside him and held it up looking for wolves. But instead he saw a fretted buck lying in the middle of the road. He assumed that it had fallen off the wagon of some merchant, and he jumped down to pick it up. But much to his surprise, he could not. It was much heavier than one could have supposed from its size and appearance. He slaved and sweated, but he could not lift it from the ground, and it seemed very strange, even eerie, for he had lifted many a buck in his day, and none had been that heavy. The merchant quickly jumped back onto the wagon and spurred on the horses. They kicked and stomped, but did not move forward. Wow. It was as if the wheels of his wagon had been bound with ropes. The horses neighed and whined and foamed at the mouth, but the wagon stood still. All at once he grew afraid again, took the torch and looked behind him, and there, sitting on the goods of his wagon, was a fretted buck, smoking a pipe. The merchant wanted to open his mouth and shout for help, but he was terrified he could not make a sound. His hair stood up on end and he panicked and became confused. Then he forced himself to get a hold of his thoughts. He unbuttoned his coat and with shaking fingers grabbed a hold of the fringes of his prayer shawl and started to pray. A moment later he heard the barking of the dogs and found that the cock had crowed and that the horses were once again trotting down the road. He looked behind him, and the buck and his pipe were gone. But he recovered his senses slowly, and he never forgot the night of terror. That is from Romania, 19th century. I get a sip of coffee. Then we go to a demon's wedding. One day, not long after Passover, strange noises were heard in the house of the master Hesediah Holiah. I guess I'm calling him Hesediah. Not far from the great synagogue of Gallipoli. These sounds grew louder and more frightening, like a mass of bees swarming out to a hive. The master and his wife were startled and thought that the noise was coming from the street. The master called out, "Who is there?" When there was no answer, he called out again. Still, there was silence. Then the strange noise resumed, and this time it seemed to be coming from upstairs. The master and his wife thought it might be thieves, so they quickly woke the servant, who lit a torch and reluctantly led the way up to the second floor. The hand of the servant shook as he unlocked the door and looked inside. But though they carried the torch to every corner of the room, they didn't see anything unusual. So they unlocked the door and started down the stairs, when the little stones suddenly began to rain down on them from the room above, sailing right through the locked door. Even stranger, the stones passed through their bodies as well, making them shudder, but there was no damage. Still, they were all so paralyzed with fear that they remained speechless, for they realized that demons had invaded the house. Some crazy stuff. Stones flying through your body. Now they all understood that they would have to abandon the house. They knew what had happened to those who had tried to resist. The imprudent ones were now to be found in the graveyard, where flames could be seen burning from their graves at midnight, and a distant howling could be heard, the sound that sounded exactly like voices of those buried there. No, the demons could have could have the house as long as they wanted it, and without uttering a single word, the master's wife and the servant started to pack personal belongings, while the master gathered together his most sacred text. An hour later, they had finished packing, and by dawn, the house was in perfect order. For if everything is in order, the demons will respect the house and leave it as they found it. But if it is not, the demons will wreak havoc on their heart's content, to their heart's content. The last thing the master's wife did was to put a white cloth on the table and set out a plate of jam as a sign of welcome. I thought you only did that for fairies. Seems like something you just do for fairies. Anyway. Then the master and his wife sadly took leave of their house, and the servant pushed their possessions in a barrel to the home of their son, who was startled to see them and upset when he heard why they had came. That day, the master and his wife and son went to see the town rabbi and told him about the noises and the rain of enchanted stones. The rabbi listened to all they said in amazement and then replied, "Be assured then that you have done the right thing in abandoning your house. So too was it fortunate that you remained silent. That is why the stones did not harm you. For if you had protested, the stones would have struck you down. I once heard of such a case in the time of my grandfather. For 3 nights, the demons hurled stones into the courtyard to force the owners to evacuate their house so the demons could take possession of it and celebrate a wedding there. The stones were harmless to those who said nothing, but one man who shouted in anger at the demons was struck in the head and knocked out. Uh huh. Sorry, my cat's getting into. Okay. Then the people who lived there knew that they would have to vacate the house. They set up tables with candles, dishes, and tableware and opened wide all the doors. After that, they went out and locked the gate after them. For a full month, nobody entered that courtyard. And when they finally opened the gate, they found that the demons had departed. Wow. It's like you have to appease the evil. Appease the evil is crazy. Okay. That incident took place at this very time of the year in the month after Passover when no weddings were supposed to take place. What? It is said that every year at this time, multitudes of demons gather together to get married. Oh, that sounds like a spring fertility celebration. Pagan orgies. That's what it sounds like to me. Anyway. Um, The master and his family were shocked and saddened to hear that they might be exiled from their house for that long, but at the same time, they were greatly relieved that they had not tried to resist the onslaught of demons. For how could they have succeeded against such multitudes? Then the rabbi asked, "Did you by chance count the number of stones that the demons tossed at you? For it is said that in this way they reveal how many days they intend to stay." But the master and his wife had not counted the stones, although they vouchsafed that there were many of them, far too many if they were to suffer that number of days as exiles from their own home. Still, the master and his wife remained with their son, along with their servant. And see, we have slave owners. And after a day or two, sounds of loud singing and wild dancing came from the house they had abandoned. The next day, neighbors on both sides of the house said that they weren't able to sleep all night because of the noise, which went on until dawn. Of course, they're the dawn bringers. It's a pagan. It's clearly visible for me. The dawn bringers, y'all. Hey, it's a anyway. Okay. And even though everyone was frightened, one man was brave enough to look in the window, and he noticed couples cavorting in a dance. He also heard music that sounded like love cries of cats. Hold on. Also, the love cries of a cat sounds like my kind of bat. Yeah, yeah. Okay, the word of God, the Bible is God breathed, the living word. I will be praying for you and your protection. I'll be praying for you and your protection too, because when you get those thoughts so solidified in some crystalline waters, the malleable stuff goes away and you're not very open to any type of other considerations. Yeah, I'll be praying that your mind opens wide, wide open. Wide open. May your brain be made wide open. Okay. Yeah, as long as you keep trying to pray for people instead of working with people, the world's going to continue to turn as fucked as it is. So you need to help people, be open with people, be open to learn about people, become curious, and love novelty again. Okay. He reported seeing more demons crowded together in that one place than there were inhabitants in all of Gallipoli. All of them flying around in a torrent of celebration as one wedding after another took place, new demons pairing off in endless succession in ceremonies that did not last as long as a blink of an eye. Aww. So it was to be for 40 nights as the revelries went on from midnight until dawn, and there was no sign that they were about to stop. By the time the master and his wife could not bear being exiled from their home any longer, and their neighbors were red-eyed from lack of sleep, at last the entire neighborhood descended on the rabbi and demanded that he do something to free them of this curse. Mm, the haves and the have-nots, y'all. The ones that have a good time and the ones that do not. Are they all consenting adults is all I care about. Not influenced by debauchery, but gave consent prior. I'm all for a good time. Okay. The rabbi had saw that it was time to come for him to confront the demons and demand their departure. So he went to the house with the rest of the rabbinic court and a scribe. There the scribe began to write an amulet in the shape of of a menorah. But after he had written no more than one line, a large black cat suddenly appeared and sat down at his feet, staring into his eyes. Meow. Oh. The scribe became terrified, and the members of the rabbinic court began to tremble over a black cat. Lordy. Lordy. Only the rabbi found the strength to act. He made a vow in the name of God, and the cat disappeared. After that, the scribe was able to finish writing the amulet, and the rabbi hung it on the door of the house. The next day, the master and his wife and servant returned to the house and found that their home was silent. They stood outside and said, "We caused you no harm. Now you too should cause us no harm." Then they took ashes and sprinkled them on the earth. We're doing magic here. All of this is magic. Scribing, sigils, amulets, protective charms. We are doing magic. Spreading ashes is magic. Talking on this interwebs of things is magic. It's all subjective at this point. Okay. Next, they reached through the door and poured oil on the floor and scattered sugar on it. That's definitely a spell saying, "Peace be unto you, peace be unto you." This is not a bad spell per se, would you say? Right? So if we only got things like if we could stop a pagan orgy and get the people to just go away instead of crashing your house, like squatters, that would be grand. But how many times have you prayed for somebody's salvation and it didn't work? It didn't work. Do you know how many people have prayed that I went back to the church? It just like for like my grandmother died praying for me, my aunt died praying for me, and my mother died praying for me. Right? Because they forgot their ancient roots. They forgot who they were. Right? That's what happened. Okay. Only then did they re-enter their house. They found everything was exactly as they had left it, except that the plate of jam had been emptied. They went upstairs and opened the door, and there in the middle of the room they saw a large pile of golden coins, a present from the demons for the disturbance they had caused. It's an old Turkey oral tradition. It doesn't even says dealing with the oral tradition from Turkey. So you're looking at pagans. This is a story of pagan invasion. Yeah. What time we got? I have a friend to dash off to. How long is this one? Okay. The hair in the milk. Yeah, we're only going till the top of the hour. Yeah. Oh, yeah, we got midwives in here. This is going to be good. Once there was a woman who felt that she was about to give birth. They called the old midwife who had learned the secrets of her trade from her mother and grandmother before her. You see, our mothers forgot who they were. I believe I shall be swearing an oath to Hygeia very, very soon. Make myself a self dedication upon my own path. Okay. Not long after she arrived, one of the servants served the expectant mother a glass of milk. Just as she was about to drink it, the woman looked into the cup, put it down with shaking hands, and all of a sudden fainted. Wow. The midwife picked up the cup and saw that there was a long black hair in it. Excuse me, you all, I'm getting a little hoarse. Yeah, sorry. The weather goes from 60 to 30 in a matter of 24 hours and then back, and it fluctuates, so it really messes up with my allergies. Um okay, she looked around, but none of the other women had hair that was so long or so black. Then she knew what to do. She quickly poured the milk into a jug, the hair along with it. Then she corked the jug and shook it with all her might, using both hands. All at once there was a scream from the inside of it. Another might have dropped and broken it then, but not the midwife. Instead, she listened, and from inside the bottle she heard a distant voice crying, "Stop! Please let me go. I beg for forgiveness." The first impulse of the midwife was to carry the jug to the sea and throw it as far as she could. Instead, she took it outside, and when all the doors and windows of the house were locked, she left the cork, set it down, and peered inside the bottle. Then, all at once, the head of a woman popped out. And the first thing the midwife noticed was that her hair was very black and so long that it fell back on into the bottle. "Lilith," the midwife hissed, and she started to pick up the cork to replace it in the bottle, but she found that it had become so heavy that she could not raise it even 1 inch. And then, for the first time, the midwife became afraid. "What are you doing here?" the midwife shouted. "Set me free from this bottle, and I will do you no harm," Lilith replied. "For that is who I was. For that is who it was. First tell me why you have come to this house," said the woman. "I have came for the mother and the child, of course," said Lilith. "You know that. But now I will forswear doing any harm to them if you will only let me go." "That is not enough," said the midwife. "What more do you want?" asked Lilith. "First, how did you know that that woman was here who was about to give birth?" demanded the midwife. "'Cause she sounds like me." Lilith replied, "As I was flying past, I smelled the odor of a mother's milk. I wanted to steal the afterbirth. We feed it to our children. Does this not sound like current events, mainstream current events? Huh? Yeah, it's like mainstream current events. Mhm. "And what happens then?" asked the wise midwife. "Then the woman dies," Lilith whispered. In a sudden motion, the midwife grabbed Lilith by her hair, pulled her out of the bottle at the same time. The demoness struggled to get free of her, but the woman held on with all her might, for she knew that a demoness is helpless when held by the hair. What? Uh-uh. When Lilith stopped struggling, the woman said, "Know that you will not leave here until you tell us how to save this woman from you once and for all." And Lilith, seeing that she had no choice, said, "Take saliva from the woman's mouth and put it in a bucket filled with water." They did this. Then Lilith blew on the foam of the water, and that instant the woman awoke from her faint. The midwife said, "How is it that you did not fear to approach this house?" Lilith said, "The mezuzah of the house is defective, and that the people do not have an amulet against me hung on the infant's bed. Now will you set me free?" "Not yet," said the woman, holding Lilith's hair just as tightly. "There is more that I want from you." "What is it?" Lilith asked. "That you serve this family in every way, especially the mother and child, and protect them from every danger for 3 years." "And what if I do not agree?" asked Lilith. "Then I will throw you and the bottle into an old trunk, lock it, and cast it to the bottom of the sea, with you still in it," cried the midwife, ready to carry out the threat. Look, if Lilith is so powerful, she should be able to get away from an old midwife. That's why I don't get. Yeah, it's just demonization of the feminine. "Not yet," said the woman. Hold a little. Well, sorry. Wrong paragraph. Lilith saw that the midwife was a formidable opponent indeed. Her voice grew calm and reassuring. "I vow to do as you say and to serve this family for 3 years. Nor will any demons dare to approach while I am here, for I am their queen." Then the midwife demanded, "Swear in the names of the angels, Senoi, San Senoi, and Samangelof." And Lilith saw that there was no escape, for those were the three angels who had commanded her to return to Adam when she had left him and flown to a cave by the Red Sea. And she had vowed that whatever she saw or heard their names, she would do no harm. So Lilith so Lilith swore in the names of the three angels, and after that she did indeed remain captive there and serve as a faithful servant. For the words of a vow are sacred not only among men and the angels, but among the demons as well. She pumped water from the well, cut wood, and guarded the woman and her child at all times so that no harm would come to them. Long before Lilith left, the text of the mezuzah was repaired, and when she took her leave, she promised that she would never come back. Nor did Lilith or her daughters attempt to return to that house, and the family lived a life of peace. That is Turkish Kurdistan oral tradition. Hello, hello, and thank you for hanging out still with me, you all. You get a round of applause. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah. So I can so see these connections here with Lilith. I have a lot of questions, and these are all just, centered around keeping women low and beholding and humbled. Mm-hmm. It's a way to keep women small and disempowered. All Abrahamic religions do this. They all do this. Oh shoot, I meant to show Candy my protection. See that? I believe that's a black mirror. Okay. We'll do one more story, y'all. The soul of Eviatar. We'll say Eviatar. Eviatar. Oh, a colt was born in the stable of Rabbi Eliezer Shehona. It was pure black and grew at an astonishing rate. Soon it was larger than its mother. Then it surpassed the size of its father. Before long, it towered above every other horse. The temper of the colt was very bad, and only in the presence of Rabbi Elijah was it calm. So silly. I'm just preparing myself. Okay. Not long after the colt was born, Rabbi began to have strange dreams. In the dream, he witnessed terrible punishments taking place. Angels with flaming rods drove on the soul of a man riddled with sin. These dreams worried him because they were so vivid. He wondered what they meant. He did not think they were warnings for himself, for he had always cleaved to the path of righteousness, and this was a mystery to him, as was the horse which sprang up so rapidly. One day the rabbi fed the colt. He heard a voice say, "Welcome." Rabbi looked around, but he did not see anyone. Then the voice said, "It is I, the horse, that is speaking. Let me tell you my story." Rabbi Eliezer jumped back in surprise, saying, "Who are you?" "My name was Aviatar," the horse replied. "I was a scholar from a family of scholars and a Cohen from a family of Cohens. But I pursued a life of sin, and now I am being pursued by the avenging angels." "Why is it that you are so punished?" asked the rabbi, frightened and intrigued at the same time. "I sinned with a young boy and ruled his body and soul for 20 years." Let that sink in. "Then my punishment came with terrible sadness. It happened like this. 3 days before Yom Kippur, a fiery snake with two heads poked through my stomach." It sounds like parasites. And Yom Kippur it seems to be like a sacrificial time from these stories, gathering from these stories. Yom Kippur, I should probably research. I get led into some serious rabbit holes. Okay. All who saw it were horrified and ran away as fast as they could, for they had never seen such a thing. None would comfort me, and I died on Yom Kippur in those throes of agony. What the heck? Yeah. When I was dead, they refused to bury me because the serpent was still breathing. Instead, my body was cast out like that of a dead beast. When my soul fled my body, avenging angels chased me with burning rods, whipping me as often as they could. To escape them, I entered into a cave, you mean. There I was safe, but I was overcome with fatigue and my memory began to grow faint. At last I fell asleep. I may have slept in that rock for centuries. When I awoke, I remembered the void of being there was like falling endlessly into an abyss. With all my strength, I freed myself from the rock, but to my horror, I found that the angels were still waiting. They had never even closed their eyes. Again, I fled as fast as I could, and this time I escaped into a flower where I was at peace at night. But during the day, when the flower opened itself to the sun, my soul writhed in pain. Oh, cleansed by the sun and the light, the truth and the light. Tell it. Now, on the third day, the flower was picked by a young boy. At that moment he picked it, I took possession of him more firmly than on the. I did two boys more firmly than of the other boy whose life I had destroyed. It was a great it was a great relief to inhabit a human being once again, but for the boy it was agony. They brought sages and wizards to help him, but no one could find what ailed him until they brought Rabbi Nathan Yerushalmi. I butchered that, sorry. Using holy names that I could not resist. He compelled me to reveal my history and my sin. Then he forced me to take leave of the boy from under the nail of his little toe, which I did with great reluctance. Of course, the avenging angels are waiting. They drew me into a pit of boiling semen. Where did this come from? Yeah, where my suffering was so excruciating it could not be described or even imagined. The only way to escape was to enter a drop of sperm. This I did, and before long I was conceived as a horse in your barn. Rabbi Eliezer was amazed at these words, but at the same time he was angered, for the man's sin was very great, and he deserved no sympathy. And Rabbi said, "Do not imagine that you have found a resting place here. You cannot remain in this horse either. I command you to go." And Rabbi pronounced a holy name, and at that instant the soul found itself wrenched out of the horse's body, and blows rained. The soul found its way, and blows rained down from the flaming rods of the avenging angels. The lifeless colt fell to the floor of the stable and shrank until it was no larger than the pit of a peach. At the same time, Rabbi Elijah's daughter had a terrible nightmare from which she never woke. Woo! Now that is in Persia. That's 16th century Persia. That's some wild stuff. God almighty. That's so like current events, y'all. That's crazy. Like this possession coming over them and being other people and acting like other things, or maybe it's just me that sees the connections. Probably a coincidence. It's a coincidence. It's a coincidence, y'all. It's just a coincidence that this sounds like it could be a story out of the Epstein files. It's just a coincidence. Mm-hmm. Okay. Rabbi Shalom Shabazi. We've heard of Shalom Shabazi before. I think he's earlier in the book. Okay, sorry. This is Rabbi Shabazi and the Cruel Governor. Cruel Governor. It's probably short. Yeah, it's really short. All right. We got 15 till. Okay, let's do this. One more. Rabbi Shalom Shabazi was one of the greatest sages and poets of all time, and he was also a master of the secret mysteries of the Kabbalah. One day he was plowing his field when a soldier approached, calling out, "Jew, Jew, leave your plow and oxen and follow me." Now the cruel governor had ordered the soldier to bring Rabbi Shabazi to him, for he took great pleasure in tormenting the Jews. And now he had thought up a new edict that would make their lives even more difficult. Rabbi Shabazi knew well why the soldier was calling him, and he did not intend to put up with the evil ways of the cruel governor any longer. So he ignored the soldier and continued to plow. The soldier soon lost patience and shouted, "Here is a Jew who acts like an ox and doesn't want to obey." At that moment, Rabbi Shabazi pronounced the holy name and the soldier turned into an ox. Rabbi Shabazi attached the new ox to the plow and let his older oxen rest. The next day, when the first soldier did not return, the governor sent a second soldier to Rabbi Shabazi. Okay, now wait. What is going on? Okay, we gotta just read, I guess. Okay. The soldier found that rabbi in the field and ordered him to leave his work and follow him. The rabbi ignored the soldier and his order until the soldier said, "I see, Jew, that you behave like a donkey. I speak to you and you pretend you do not hear." Then Rabbi Sabazi looked up and pronounced the holy name and turned him into a donkey, which he loaded with things to carry. On the third day, when the second soldier did not come back, the angry governor sent yet another soldier to bring Rabbi Sabazi to him in chains. This soldier insulted the holy man and called him a dog. So guess what the rabbi turned him into? Whatever it was, it ran around in circles barking. On the fourth day, when he had finished his plowing, Rabbi Sabazi went to see the governor to find out what he wanted. The governor sat on the fourth floor of his palace, and in order to reach him, a special pass was required on every floor. The rabbi decided to eliminate these obstacles, so he stood next to the palace and put a peg in the ground. He struck the peg once, and the first floor of the palace sank into the earth along with all that contained. Oh my goodness. When he struck the peg a second time, the second floor sank down. The third time he struck it, the third floor sank under the earth, and the fourth floor stood on the level. The terrified governor looked out the window and saw Rabbi Sabazi standing before him. "Why have you done this?" cried the governor. "What do you want from me?" But Rabbi Sabazi just stared at him. Then, then the governor, who had planned to announce the evil decree, realized that the tables had turned. He said, "The inhabitants of the palace are yelling and screaming from the depths of the earth. Please make the palace the way it was." Rabbi Sabazi replied, "I will agree to do this on the condition that you vow to eliminate all evil decrees against the Jews and promise not to make any new ones." "I accept," said the governor, "if you will also return my 3 soldiers." "I will return them," said the rabbi. Then the rabbi pulled out the peg, and the palace returned to its former condition, and the ox, the donkey, and the dog turned back into the soldiers and ran home as fast as they could. And their cruel governor never lifted his hand against the Jews again. That is in Yemen. That's a Yemen oral tradition. Very interesting. Elusive diamond. All right, guys, I am going to close it at almost an hour. Like I said, I have got to go somewhere. And you all have a blessed day. And thank you so very, very, very much for hanging out with me. It was awesome. Tales of some really interesting stories. Folk tales. Yep. All right. Have a good day, y'all. Bye.